Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Petitions and Representation Board. Just with a few house rules and information, the induction loop is now operative. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphones and switch them off again after speaking. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the council website within 24 hours of the meeting. Please switch off or put the mobile phones on silent if you need to use them. The other rules, emergency, in case of any emergency evacuation from the council chamber, turn left, follow the green emergency exit signs to the main town hall entrance and proceed to the assembly point at St. George's Square. Sorry for starting the meeting late, as we were not sufficient councillors to carry the meeting, and we've had the councillors turn, thank God for us to turn up, and we can carry this meeting on. Apologies of absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Simmons and Councillor Khan.
Okay. Minutes of the last meeting. Do members agree me signing the minutes?
I was going to say, I think I was I not present at the last meeting?
I think you weren't.
Could you check? If not, I would have given my apology. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. Section 106. Are there any section 106s?
None, Chair.
Disclosures of interest.
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Urgent business.
Again, none, Chair.
Okay, the first item of petitions is a petition requesting the prevention of installation of bollards at 83 Kingsway. That's been deferred in the past, and I think it's the third time it's come to us. Can I ask the officer?
Yes, Chair. So obviously it was deferred for various reasons. The latest deferment was due to investigate the possibilities of whether we could put down foldable bollards to allow access to the residents onto the hard standing area. We've undertaken an investigation that's reviewed our powers and policies in relation to this. We've concluded it's not possible to install fold down lockable bollards at this location, as doing so would be encouraging vehicles to cross over a pedestrian drop crossing point, which poses a safety risk to pedestrians in the form of vehicle pedestrian collisions. The council cannot permit vehicles illegally crossing the highway and cannot allow residents to manage who can and can't access an off-street parking area from the highway. The council doesn't have the budgets or resources to maintain such a facility and has no justification for doing so. A fold-down bollard, it's felt that a fold-down bollard would not sufficiently stop the issue of the drivers parking their vehicles on this land. The owners would not be able to prevent it from occurring and could lead to confrontation for them. I've attached some recent photos that were taken, I believe a Lamborghini, I think it's a Huracan, that is parked sort of near to the residents' property. Not suggesting it's the residents that have done so, but the reality is that as long as the foldable bollards are there, no one's going to be able to physically stop them or stop these incidents coming, and they are occurring still on a daily basis. And as you can see from the photos, do represent a hazard to pedestrians and, you know, present the risk of a collision between pedestrians and vehicles on a footway.
Thank you, officer. Are there any questions to the officer? Councillor Dave.
You mentioned lockable bollards. I think last time we agreed one lockable bollard to allow access to the people who are picking up the disabled person who needed picking up, and then reel up and lock the bollard. It was just one bollard. I wouldn't have thought it practical to have a load of lockable bollards.
The reasons for one bollard versus multiple would still be the same, though. It's sort of regardless of how many number there were. To be fair, it was only given conclusion that one was to be considered, but for the reasons I've just stated, it's not possible to install one.
Any other questions from members? First to the members. The last question of the members that was there at the last meeting, did we not made a decision in principle of a removable bollard? Councillor Dave, could you help me?
We did. We thought we'd resolve the issue by the installation of a lockable bollard, but since then the information has come forward, it's not practical to do so.
Okay, the lead petitioner.
I just wanted to basically say, why is it not practical to do so a lockable bollard? And also the second thing, the Hurricane Park there is clearly not ours. A neighbour used the drive for a few hours when my dad was away on appointment to park their car there, which was for a wedding. Is quite irrelevant. It's still on the drive. How are we going to safely take my dad, who's 94 years old, schizophrenic, and's got Alzheimer's, and my 27-year-old brother, who's got ankylosing spondylitis, which is arthritis in his hips? Where are they meant to park their car? That's my main concern. The disabled people in the house, where are they meant to put their car? And also, if you have a look, I did send other pictures. I don't think they're printed on the agenda. Literally adjacent with the crossing that Mark is talking about, it's regular flooding. Every time there's raining, it's raining. There's regular flooding there, which we are brushing, sweeping ourselves. Instead of using all this money to install the bollards, nobody can cross over. We're literally brushing. You're going to work there. We're brushing that area. I've got pictures. I've got video evidence. It's a massive flood there. Why not use that money to resurface that area and make it more safe? That's tactile crossing. If you have a look at it, it's not even usable because of the rain that's there every single day. And we are maintaining it ourselves, which is not our job. And we don't park our car on the tactile crossing.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to members. Any questions or comments? The officer.
Yeah, sure. Just in response to the queries there, part of the flooding that is being caused as a result of the grass verged area being overrun on a regular basis and being compacted and therefore not acting as a sustainable drain it should be. I'm aware of some sort of standing water issues that occur in rainfall. I don't believe there is a role of resurfacing. The damage to the tactile crossings and the footway that's been done there is actually being caused as a result of vehicles parking and overrunning the area. Footways aren't designed to take the weight of vehicles sort of point loading on them when they're being parked or equally being driven over. The tactiles are in a poor state of repair owing to the fact they're being overridden. With regards to the parking concerns, it was suggested as part of this process that there is a parking bay just the other side of the sort of drop crossover to the entrance of the Kingsway depot. We could allocate one of those bays that's currently not got any restrictions on it to become a disabled bay to allow disabled badge holders to park in there. It's within approximately 20 metres of the property, which would deem to be a reasonable sort of distance to push a wheelchair, park a vehicle and push a wheelchair and maintain sort of a reasonable access.
Councillor.
Ignoring the Lamborghini, the car immediately in front of it seems to be parked. Is it parked on the pavement or why is it there? Do you know whose car that is? Have you seen the pictures?
So, Asian hire cars. It was a neighbour's wedding.
Yeah.
That's all. They asked permission to park this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I understand that.
Councillor, do you have any comments or questions on that?
Yeah.
I'll ask.
Thank you. This has come to us a few times already, and we've been through all of the motions of, you know, the tactile crossing, which is actually being damaged by the cars driving over it. We've been through all of this already. I don't think we should keep repeating the same sort of questions and answers that we've done in the last 2 meetings. It's not a useful use of time for anyone. Could I clarify once again why we can't do the lockable bollards?
Sorry, I missed the very end of the question there. Can you have?
Why are the lockable bollards not feasible?
Okay, yeah, sure. So there's an ongoing maintenance issue with them. There's no way to install them without becoming a potential trip hazard for pedestrians walking over the area. And equally, what we're doing is we're sort of effectively permitting illegal crossing of the highway, which is what they'll be doing. There's no way to manage them. It's not a resident's duty to say who does or doesn't have an access to a highway. The council are quite clear in the legislation saying that we shouldn't have access to the highway without a vehicle drop crossover point being there.
But officer, the problem I have in principle, we made a decision because of the disability requirements to have some form of a removable bollard to allow access for this disabled person. That's the problem I have.
It was offered as a suggestion to be an investigation, but not made as a decision, as I understand it. And the reality is, there's no legal justification for doing so, and we don't have the maintenance budget or the sort of liability to do so.
Okay, I'll move it to the councillors. Would you like any more questions? Dave, do you have any?
No, I just don't know how to resolve this situation. It's either bollards or no bollards. And then you get a situation like this where anybody can park there for as long as they like, with no restrictions. That's the point.
Yeah, but the crux of the issue
trying
is
to make.
exactly that, councillor.
Yeah.
A decision is. Yeah, listen.
But it doesn't seem to be a valid solution.
I think
It'll just cause more problems.
Question I have is, obviously you're looking at the junction, some work to be done around it. That should address quite of the concerns. But what we're looking at is a removable bollard to be installed either on the highway or possibly on the access to the residents, where the residents' forecourt is.
No, I understand the point, councillor. The problem we've got is that it's not just the parking that's occurring on the residents' forecourt. On this particular picture, you can only see one vehicle parked on the residents' forecourt. I've submitted previous photos as evidence in the past where vehicles are parking at the back of the verge. They're parking on the footway itself, causing obstruction and blocking it. And they're causing a safety risk in the view of that when vehicles are exiting to the depot, they can't see around the vehicles because they're in the desire line of, the visual display of the approach to the roundabout. That's the problem. A lockable bollard doesn't prevent everybody from gaining access. It would, if it wants to be put in front of the resident's property or on their property to allow parking only on their property, it would stop parking there. But the reality is other vehicles that aren't the residents are still going to continue to park on the footway in an inconsiderate manner and an unsafe manner.
That would be an enforcement issue then.
It would be an enforcement issue. No sort of argument from me. Absolutely, you're right. It's a best place, an obstruction on the highway is something the police do have the powers to deal with. Equally, the CEOs have powers to deal with. I think we can see there's a single yellow line, albeit faded. We can get that refreshed and it can be enforced upon.
Yeah, to move this along, as this item has been discussed a number of times, and we've gone in numerous details on the issue.
So just to clarify, even this car coming over the dropped curb and parking on that little bit of the driveway, is that illegal? That's not allowed?
That's correct, councillor. Yeah, the drop curb that you're referring to there, you can see the patch, sort of the square mark in front of that. That's where we used to have a tactile crossing point to aid vulnerable people. We had to remove that because it was constantly being damaged due to being overrun. That drop curb there is effectively a pedestrian access point, not a vehicle drop crossover point. We wouldn't, as part of our council policy, install a drop crossover within 10 metres of a junction. So were an application to be made for a drop crossover point for vehicles at that location, it would be reviewed and denied on safety grounds in the fact that it is 10 metres within a junction.
Okay, so basically, whatever car it is, even one car going over and going on the drive, it's not legal and it's not part of the rules. Okay.
That's right.
So the only thing we can decide today is whether we're going to have the bollards or we're not going to have the bollards, because the lockable bollards aren't feasible. If we don't have the bollards, then the same issue is going to keep happening. If we do put the bollards in, then the petitioner's family member can't park. So I think we just need to put something forward today and decide what we're going to do. If we are going to have the bollards, can we still put that space in? You said it was 20 meters away or something like that.
So it's within 10 meters of junction, so we couldn't. It's also the factor of the health and safety sort of liability aspect to the council. There's one, it's illegal under legislation for vehicles to cross the highway on a footway where there is not a vehicle crossover point. There's the safety implications of encouraging basically traffic to enter where a vulnerable crossing point will be for pedestrians. The third and final option is the fact that, like I say, these vehicles do obscure the views of vehicles exiting the depot on the approach to the roundabout. If there were to be an accident and it was concluded that visibility displays were blocked as a result of illegal parking on the footway, and the council were to allow it, there is potential that there could be ramifications in court that would see the council held liable for the accident occurring. The fact that we were aware that this safety concern was present and we did nothing to address it or stop it and have allowed it to continue to the point where it's caused an accident.
So when we at the last meeting decided that we were going to consider the lockable bollards, was the issue of it being illegal not an issue then as well? I'm just trying to remember. It was a couple of months ago, so I'm just trying to remember.
That's fine, Councillor. I understand this has been going on for some time. That was initially raised at the very first meeting, and I believe the second. Unfortunately, I was unavailable to attend the last meeting as I was on a training course. So my manager came in. He may not have reaffirmed that, but it was raised at the very start of the process and is sort of registered quite early on in the report document.
Okay, I think we've gone quite detailed with it. I'm going to put it to members. I'll put it to members that either we take.
I just ask one question of the petitioners. Is your father, is he blue badge holder?
My father's not, but my brother is. My 27-year-old brother, he's a blue badge holder, yes.
On behalf of your father?
No, my brother's registered disabled. He's got arthritis in his hips. So both of them are disabled.
So he's got a blue badge.
My brother does, yes.
Where does he park?
He's the one that parks the car. He's the main person, and so is my dad, that need to have access to the drive.
But where did he park his car?
He parks the car on the drive.
Yeah?
Yeah.
On the drive?
Yeah, he parks the car on the drive.
Legally?
Well, that's where we've been parking for the past 30 odd years. The only other thing I wanted to say is the fact that he mentioned a lay-by. The lay-by is quite far for somebody that's got arthritis, and even for an elderly man. Also recently, there was 4 weeks ago, a big fire where we had to emergency evacuate ourselves. Mark wasn't there then. My dad was then hospitalized. He's got aspiration pneumonia, and that's probably prematured his life now because of the fact he was exposed to toxic fire flames. So I don't know where all the legality was then on that day. We had to emergency evacuate. If that was to happen again, where the lay-by is literally adjacent to the depot. Where are they then going to go if there's another fire at that depot again? Are you aware there was a fire, a massive fire? Yeah, and my dad was hospitalized due to inhaling toxic fumes. But the lay-by that they're mentioning
is a separate issue, and hopefully it won't happen again. It was a one-off. Yeah.
Right, Councillor. Any further questions before I move towards closure of this meeting on this item? I put it to members either we take no action or we take action. As I'll be honest, personally, as this item has been around, and particularly with regard to the last meeting and the office that presented the case at that time, legality of crossing the path or not crossing, surely any forecourts will need crossings, whether it's public or private, will need crossings. I'll let you comment, but this junction will need treatment in the near future. So the right materials could be used to address this. But I saw the officer put his hand up.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in relation to that, you're absolutely right. Treatments could be taken, but the reality is it would go against the council's policy with regards to installing a vehicle drop crossover within 10 metres of a junction, which is what this would be doing. And also with regards to your question about if a property has a hard standing, surely there should be a vehicle drop crossover. No, that's not the case. The council doesn't have a duty, or a statutory duty rather, to provide vehicle drop crossovers to properties. Properties, if they wish to apply for a drop crossover, they can go through the process in which they'll pay an application fee of £100. Our contractor rather goes out, measures out, as part of the application process, they're issued a form that sort of details what they can and can't do. So the hard standing area has to be of a certain size, width-wise and lengthways. There has to be no sort of obstructions in the way, i.e. pedestrian crossing points or within proximity to a junction, or sometimes if boxes are there or lamp columns, similar things like that, they'll prevent the process. And equally, there's other sets of criteria, i.e. if there's one existing already, we wouldn't allow an in and out crossover except in exceptional circumstances. And in this case, if a crossover application is within 10 metres of a junction.
Officer, I was referring to damage to the material. I was referring to damage to material in the sense if when the junction is treated, appropriate material could be used to navigate that issue. That's what I was referring to.
I mean, as in strengthening the footway, yes, we could strengthen the footway to allow traffic, but the reality is this isn't a vehicle drop crossover point. This is a pedestrian tactile crossing point to aid the vulnerable. It's not for traffic and vehicle. That's not the purpose of it.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, so if we install the bollards, then it's not going to make the family happy because of their family member. If we don't install the bollards, it's basically setting a precedent, isn't it? That this is against council policy. It's 10 metres within however many metres of a lay-by. And if we don't install the bollards, rather than, obviously for the last 30 years we've left it, but now that it's come to petitions, if we don't install it, is it basically setting a precedent for other people to say the same thing, that they can pass over the road and park? Is that basically what's going to happen?
That's a correct summary, yes, Councillor.
Okay. If we are going to install the bollard, we need to have a suggestion for the family members, as we've suggested before, having a disabled bay nearby where they can just drop the person off at home and then go and park up, something like that. I feel like the only way we're going to end this and not keep coming back and back again.
I think we've been through a site visit and we've gone through all these avenues in the past. So I'll put it to members, all those in favour of no action or none. Okay, all those favours that we've installed bollards to safeguard the public. Or are there any?
Members, can we make this decision?
Okay, I've been asked the question, can we make this decision with 3 councillors? Quorum? Yes, we can. Yeah, the recommendation we have is twofold. One is the recommendation on the report that the Petitions Representation Boards recommends the installation of bollards at 83 to 81 Kingsway as proposed to protect pedestrians on the footway by preventing vehicles using dropped pedestrian crossing points, illegally crossing the footway and parking on the footway to prevent parking on the footway and the verge area outside 83 to 81, causing an obstruction and obscuring visibility as it's set out. Or we take no action. I mean, first of all, I'll take the recommendations of the report. Do members want?
So if I may, Chair, sorry, there's just a tiny bit that appears to be missing off that, and please forgive me that. It's to install the bollard as well, but to also create a disabled bay in the nearby lay-by, which is approximately 20 metres. So it provides for a parking provision for blue badge holders on the other side of the crossover, which is, like I say, approximately 20 metres as part of that recommendation.
Can I just say, disabled bay won't be just for us. Anybody can use it, anyone.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can add that. Councillors? Yes. Yes.
Is this an amendment or was it part of the recommendation?
It's an amendment.
It should have been part on there, but it looks like it's been missed off this version of the report. Apologies, there's 3 or 4 versions of the report lying around.
Okay, are we clear what the officer's recommendation is?
Is to install the bollards and provide a disabled bay.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and it can be used by anybody with a blue badge, but normally there's only one applicable there.
Also correct, Chair. Unfortunately, we're not as an authority in a position to allocate disabled bays to specific vehicles or properties. So it has to be anyone with a blue badge holder will have a right to park in that blue badge bay.
Additional disabled bays.
Yeah, there's no limit to how many disabled bays we can install on the highway, and if it turns out that there is a requirement to put more in, then there's some further measures can be considered, and we can increase the number of disabled bays within that lay-by area. I think currently, from memory and pure judgment, I think there's approximately enough space on there for 4 to 5 vehicles currently, so there is scope potentially to provide 2, 3, or even 4 more additional disabled bays on top of that one, should it require it.
We're clear on that. I'll put it to the meeting that we vote on the installation of bollards with the additional parking, disabled parking bay, as stated by the officer. All those in favour? Oh, can someone second it?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favour? I'll abstain, it's carried anyway. Yeah, that's carried, the decision's made. Okay, now moving on to the next item of the agenda, is the petition implementation of speed cameras on Grange Avenue. The officer.
Yep, so this was another one that was deferred. It was accepted that speed cameras were not a feasible option owing to the fact the 85th percentile speeds were under the posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour. So we were asked to go away and investigate the feasibility of installing traffic calming measures as opposed to speed camera measures to try and reduce traffic speeds. The report has been updated as follows. Consideration has been given to the installation of traffic calming on Grange Avenue. However, owing to the fact it's a primary emergency service vehicle route, a bus route in an extremely busy thoroughfare, serving both the local train station and access out of Luton towards the Bedford and Dunstable, the installation of traffic calm would likely have a detrimental impact on residents. Traffic calming would see an increase in traffic noise, congestion, which would result in longer response times for emergency services, as well as negatively impacting air quality. 85th percentile speeds on Grange Avenue were recorded to be at 20 miles per hour, demonstrating that speeding is not an issue on the road, and therefore traffic calming is likely to have little to no further positive impact on road speeds.
Thank you. Can I ask officer, maybe they need help? Okay. Any question to the officer?
No. I'll move the recommendation to speed cameras not be installed at that particular location for the reason given out in the report.
Okay. Got the lead petitioner.
Thank you. I'm here. Yeah.
He's here.
I mean, could I address the report and some of the context that's put in there? But the first thing I'd like to do, on points 4 and 5, it seems point 4 says that 85% of the traffic was not speeding, but the other 15% possibly was. It isn't just about perception, it's reality. When you live there, you know what speeding is when you've been driving. The 5th point 5 says that there's only been, I use the word 9 slight recorded accidents. At this point, could I ask that councillors are able to see the film that I've shared from an accident that was in December last year?
Whilst the officers doing that, can I just ask the officer, are there categories of speed cameras? Because I've heard it from hearsay, some authorities are looking at installing their own cameras. The government is allowing speed cameras, but those speed cameras will have fines but no penalty points. Would the officer have any information on that? I think
that's not something I'm aware of, and to be fair, likely not something that the council would have any governance over. The reality is the council are responsible for the installation and maintenance of speed cameras. Any sort of fines or points that are handed out as a result of infractions against the speed limit are handled by the Bedfordshire Police, the constabulary. So it's not something I'm aware of. It's not something I've heard for sure. The only thing I could compare it to is I know certainly in 20 zones, if vehicles are caught to be speeding over 20 but under 30, they can be issued, rather than points, take the option of having a driving education course on a first offence. But whether that's being carried over to camera enforcement, I don't know. I don't see that cameras would. It's not the camera that makes the decision about what offence we get. The camera is purely an evidential and data gathering tool. It's then for the the CPS and the police to choose how they prosecute that and how they sort of deal with the punishment accordingly.
Thank you. I was just trying to get into my head that some cameras that local authorities were looking at possible powers of installing cameras. Like for example, the 20-mile radius that's coming in different towns and cities, without the penalty, but without the penalty points, but as a fine only measure to help.
So
I can't remember exactly which borough. I think it's one of the outer southwest boroughs of London. I could try to find out for you, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I'd be very interested to find out some more information on that for sure. I mean, we have been granted new. Oh, sorry. We've been granted new powers under the Traffic Management Act, which allows us to enforce against moving traffic offences. So things like turning against right turn bans, going down no entry streets, entering pedestrianised areas. We now have powers to issue fines through cameras for those offences, whereas historically the only people that could intervene against them were the police. But with regards to speed, I'm not aware of any powers that we're being granted to carry out enforcement of the speed limits. That still lies with the constabulary.
Just I can confirm, Chair, if it's fine. I moved from North London, and North London's riddled with cameras that are put up by local authorities, and it's an income stream for local authorities. There are very busy junctions off of the A10, for instance, where I used to live in Enfield. There are scores of local authority installed speed cameras that have nothing to do with the police, and you get your fine from the local authority, and you don't get points, but you get fines, and they're numerous across North London, where I originally moved from before I come to Luton, and they've been there years.
Okay, so just in response to that, it does sound like potentially they've got some local bylaws that allow them to do that. The reality is in Luton at the minute, we don't have the powers to do that. That I'm certain. It's something perhaps we could look at investing in the future as a potential revenue stream and a punishment tool for speeding. But at this stage, we don't have those powers. The powers that have been granted under the TMA to us are those with regards to infractions against moving traffic movements such as bus lanes, again, right turn bans, no entries, that sort of thing. Definitely not for speeding at this stage.
Councillor.
Yeah, I think we're getting confused as to what the police can do, and they are the only ones that can enforce speed limits as a totting up procedure. What we do at the moment, especially on our red routes, we can give a penalty charge notice through the post for people contravening the red routes and the safety around school routes. They're not endorsable offences. They're a fine issued by the local authority under the specific act, and that's what I think applies in London as well for the safer streets that we've not introduced.
Okay. We'll move on with the film. Sure. I think. Sorry for starting a debate there.
Okay. that is not a minor accident. That is not a minor accident. And that is not a person who wasn't, one, driving away from the police. That wasn't a person who wasn't speeding. They were speeding. The police at the site said probably in excess of 40 miles an hour. When they hit those cars, they wrote off 5 cars, 3 gardens, and ended up in my front garden. A wrecked car ended up in our front, where we haven't got a garden anymore because it doesn't exist. So I'm just saying you've got to take context here. So calling it minor accidents and not speeding, I think that just shows you. And that, if you talk to people on the road who have lived there longer, those of numerous. There's probably 20 people that I talked to on that petition. Half of them have replaced their front gardens because they've been hit by cars crashing by driving at speed along Range Avenue. So I just thought that would illustrate the point that was not a minor accident. The police were called, the road was closed. There was some minor injuries, but the damage to properties and cars was significant on that road, and that was parked cars. The other point I'd like to make with petition is that I heard that installing traffic calming measures may create problems and the residents wouldn't want them. Well, I don't know it. Having read that report and having talked to 4 or 5 people that signed a petition, no one has been asked whether they would be happy to have traffic calming measures. There's no discussion been had with anyone along Grange Avenue. So I don't know how that summation is made that we don't want them. So I do struggle with that a little bit. And then I look at Oakley Road South, which is the bit that's going towards Dunstable Road. Fresh traffic calming measures have been put on that road. And there's a bus route. I then look to Brammingham Road at the junction of Marsh Road. There's a new traffic calming measure. There's 2 bus routes on that, and that's a main route to the A6. There are lorries, buses and cars use that road just like they do Grange Avenue. And there's traffic calming measures and speed bumps for 200 metres of Brammingham Road. And it's a narrow road with people living in. Was there a petition? Did people complain that they didn't want those speed bumps? We've not even been asked on that road whether we would want some traffic calming measures. Now, if it wasn't feasible because the road is busy, there's ways of changing drivers' behaviours by putting up some signage. You've got a care home up the road with very vulnerable adults. You've got a busy thoroughfare. Putting up signs about warning, about trying to get that speed reduced would have an effect of changing drivers' behaviour. I think it could, because at the moment it's a free-for-all. When you come from each end of Grange Avenue, there's lights at either end, people bomb down the road because it's a nice straight road and people hit that with speed, whether they're coming from Marsh Road end or they're coming from Leagrave High Street, Oakley Road Junction end. People hit it fast. So I would really question how the decision has been made to say that traffic calming measures aren't welcome when no one's been asked, because no one's been asked on that road. And it's a busy road, but so is Brammingham Road, so is Oakley Road South leading to the Dunstable Road. And they've got traffic calming measures and they're residential roads as well. And they have bus routes and they have good vehicles. Going to the point of emergency vehicles, well, emergency vehicles don't get parking tickets for their blue lighting, don't get speeding tickets for blue lighting, do they? So it's a red herring there. So if they see a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, they can break it knowing they're going to an emergency. They break it on the side roads that are all off of Grange Avenue is 20-mile-an-hour speed limit zones. No one, with your police, ambulance, fire brigade, you do not get a speeding ticket if you exceed a speed limit. So to say it couldn't work because it would slow down response rates for emergency vehicles is nonsensical, because they aren't affected by speed limits. They can break them when they have to, and that's why you have blue lights. So I just can't understand why there's a resistance to even considering, if you can't do cameras, some form of signage to ask people to reduce their speed down, some way of reducing that speed down when you hit that stretch of road. And just to say that residents wouldn't like it when you've not asked a resident at all on that road, not any other petitioners anyway, I find that quite staggering that we can make that comment.
Bring in the councillor.
Yes, I think going back to the actual film clip, whatever you install there, speed cameras or speed bumps, wouldn't prevent an idiot from doing what they were doing. It happens all over the place. We cannot, under the evidence that we've got here, recommend the installation of speed cameras. But what we can do is recommend the traffic calming measures be put in a future programme. We had the same problem. I represent Farley Ward, which we had long rows, Castlecroft, Whipperley Way, and Longcroft, where there was always speed and the youngsters bombing along. So eventually we campaigned for traffic calming measures. Whipperley Way is a bus route, but then the buses don't have a problem actually going over the humps because of their wheelbase. And speaking to the residents in Longcroft and Castlecroft, I says, have these been affected? They said, yes, it's made one hell of a difference. So I think that the residents where you live should be asked if they would agree to some sort of traffic calming measure, and then to be put in the, if it's all agreed, there would be a consultation with the residents. What the proposal would be the traffic humps, or maybe a speed table, depending. But at least you've got the option. If you say no, we don't want that, then it doesn't happen. If you say yes, then it can be put in a future programme in the future to install some kind of traffic calming measures in that particular location.
Thank you, Councillor. Officer.
Yeah, just sure. I'd like to discuss some of the points that were raised earlier. I mean, first and foremost, with the video, obviously a fairly shocking video demonstrating an accident, a collision. I spoke with the police service with regards to that vehicle, because having shown that video and having looked at my accident data, where I completely agree with you, what appeared to be a fairly serious accident was recorded as slight. Some context for what happened in that accident: it was a 90-year-old gentleman who was driving an automatic vehicle in the direction of Leagrave High Street from Archway Bridge. He was travelling along the road. There was a BMW travelling towards him. The lights from the BMW were said to have blinded him. The gentleman was startled, and with the fact that it was a automatic car, instead of hitting the brake, unfortunately hit the accelerator in a state of confusion, owing to the fact that his reaction times were probably likely slower due to his age and the fact that what was going on, it was night or early evening, around 6 o'clock, I believe. The vehicle then lost control as he'd hit the accelerator rather than the brake pedal, and then collided straight with the vehicles in there. So what we're sort of discussing there is not as a result of a product of a speeding driver, it's a result of a driver who perhaps wasn't in the best condition to be driving, resulting in that accident. Moving on to the points with regards to the emergency service times being affected, you sort of misunderstood, I think, what I was trying to make a point of there. With regards to traffic calming, there are various points of traffic calming that we put in place with things like speed cushions, which we do put on bus routes and various routes, which, wider accident vehicles such as, completely agree, ambulances, the fire service buses can traverse quite comfortably without too much of an impact. The problem is, though, all the other vehicles do slow down, and if in a congested road like Grange Avenue, particularly in peak times as well, if vehicles are now travelling at a slower rate of speed because of the cushions we've installed, it does make the services harder to speed through. Ultimately, they still have to require vehicles to move out of their way so they can make progress as they make their emergency service routes. If vehicles are slowing or more congested owing to the result of traffic calming, that makes that process that little bit harder for them, does affect response times, which is what was gathered by that. With regards to the residents not being consulted, I'm not too sure where you're getting that information from. We wouldn't actually consult with the residents at this early stages. We consult residents once we've got a proposal in mind with sort of design ideas to present to them. There's not been any suggestion that we would correspond or speak with residents at this stage. This is purely a high-level investigation to have a look at what we've got. The high-level investigation, as I said, resulted that the 85th percentile speed was 25 miles per hour. Now, I accept that, yes, you are correct. 15% of those vehicles over that 85% now are potentially travelling at in excess of 25 miles an hour, possibly in excess of 30 miles per hour. But what we need to bear in mind is those 15% of drivers are probably likely to choose to do so of their own free will. In my experience, those same drivers are sort of not really affected by the traffic calming measures that we can put in place. What the data demonstrates is the majority of drivers that travel along that section of road drive to the speed limit, or in fact underneath it, because they accept that it's a busy section of road. There are other sort of hazards they need to be aware of, and therefore take due care caution when they're driving. The drivers that sort of don't do that sort of thing aren't normally swayed by traffic calming measures. So you will find that even in roads that we have traffic calming on, there will be drivers that continue to drive inappropriately on those in excess, potentially risking damage to their vehicles or to other vehicles or pedestrians in their wake. Certainly, I've seen it before on roads. Catswick Road was a recent example I was on, where a vehicle overtook another vehicle travelling at 20 miles per hour on the approach to a speed hump, rattled up the speed hump and then rattled back down it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but the reality is these sorts of measures don't dissuade that sort of driving behaviour. There are some drivers, unfortunately, out there that need to be re-educated, and the only way they are dealt with is when they come into brushes with the law and are sort of given punitive measures as a result, forcing them to change their ways or fined accordingly. I think I've addressed everything. If there's something I missed, there was a lot to go through.
Just a question. Well, I said Birmingham has just had
please,
recent.
Please, can you talk through me? Yeah.
The traffic calming measures in, and it's a busy road, bus route, main route at the junction of Marsh Road, and
I'll let the officers answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So just in relation to that, you're talking, I assume, about the sort of mini humps that have appeared in the middle of the road at the moment. They're actually not part of the design process. There's an ongoing issue at the minute. You can see all the traffic management that's still in process at the minute there. Those humps have been that there as the scheme isn't finished, and they're a safety measure while the scheme's due to be completed. They will eventually become islands. They won't be the mini humps they appear to be. It's purely because the scheme's halfway through being progressed at the moment. They're there to highlight the fact there is a risk in the road as we're pushing people over against the lining at the minute. So they're a temporary measure rather than a permanent.
Okay, thank you, officer. To councillors, are there any questions before I move? Okay, can we move to the recommendation? The recommendation I have in front of me are speed cameras not be installed and the speed limit to remain at 30 miles an hour with ongoing monitoring by the council and in partnership with Bedfordshire Police surrounding roads, speed and enforcement. But I think I did take the point of council. If there are any consultation on speed,
Sorry, there was a lot to rattle through. I'm just aware of one more point that was raised about the gentleman raised the request of whether there could be sort of additional signage, try and help people slow down. The reality is, unfortunately, because it's 30 mile per hour limit road, the legislation under the traffic signs, directions and guidance manual doesn't allow for repeated signs on a 30 mile per hour limit load. A 30 mile per hour limit road is expected to be self-enforcing and obvious by the fact there are columns on it. So basically what it's saying is when you're travelling on a 30 mile per hour limit road, you'll know you're travelling on one. If you're not on a 30 mile per hour limit road, it will be signed accordingly, whether it be a 20 zone and therefore self-enforcing with traffic calming, or whether it be a 40, 50 or national speed limit zone, then with repeater signage.
Okay, thank you, officer. I move that speed cameras not be installed and the speed limit remains at 30 with the ongoing monitoring by the council. Are all those?
And also whether suitability of Grange Avenue and surrounding streets be looked at for the potential of installing traffic calming measures. And to be sure, they do work. And I regularly use the bus on Farley Hill. It goes Whippley Way, and it's not a problem. I mean, buses don't normally speed, but they can for slow, and it's not incumbent. They're fine. And it wouldn't affect emergency vehicles either.
The only counterpoint I would say to that is you're comparing sort of two different style of roads there, to be fair. Longcroft Road, Whippley Way, they are urban residential roads that serve mainly a school and residential properties. Grange Avenue is a main thoroughfare that serves sort of access and arterial routes to and out of the town. Ordinarily, we don't normally put 30 sort of traffic calming on 30 mile per hour limits, but listen, I'm not against traffic calming by a long stretch. I'm the road safety officer for Luton Council. It's my responsibility to improve the road safety of the network. I've put traffic calming in numerous places in my time as an engineer and indeed program schemes that. So don't take this as I'm not for it.
Okay, yeah.
This year, I think during the summer holidays, and the residents are over the moon with it.
Councillor.
Can I just second Councillor Taylor's recommendation to not do the speed cameras, but to add calming measures? Investigate the calming measures.
Okay, I put to the council that we do not install speed cameras, but we ask the officer to possible investigate any potential speed calming measures in.
To clarify, because that was effectively the deferment to this meeting, which is what we've done. I've investigated the possibility, and for the reasons I've stated in the report this evening, I've stated that it's not suitable to do so. So I guess the options are we don't install them or speed cameras, or that we basically say we are going to put traffic calming in a date to be programmed in the future. But that's what I've done that. I've done that and written about that tonight. That's what's okay. Noted.
There might be one easy thing, signage. You know, you go past often places where there are care homes and you have that sign with elderly people. And it's a sign to say, please slow down as elderly people, because we've got a care home. That might be a really simple thing to put
help
up.
this one.
Sorry.
The recommendations I have in front of me are to not have speed cameras, but the officers and the residents can work, you know, in the future for some speed cameras if it's possible, for traffic calming measures if it's possible. But we leave that with the officer. But at this moment in time, we've exhausted this item, I think. But I put it to members. All those in favour of not having speed cameras, please. Just be seconded.
That's if we don't have speed cameras, but we look into the calming measures. That's what I'm in favour for.
Yeah, but the officers, I think the officer is saying he's already been and he looked at the speed traffic calming measures. We're telling him, but at the same time, we're asking him to work with the residents basically. He's already been and done that basically.
Could I have the exact wording of the recommendation that we're putting forward? What are we asking the officer to do?
Well, we're asking the officer's recommendation in front of the report is speed cameras not to be installed and the speed limit remains at 30 with ongoing monitoring by the council and in partnership with Berkshire Police surrounding roads, speed and enforcement.
So when there's nothing about the traffic calming measures in this recommendation.
It says it says ongoing monitoring by the council and the partnership. That's where it covers it, I believe.
Councillor, yes, perhaps I've been a little bit unclear in my statement with that, but the intention was, yes, we've done an investigation so far. Well, we'll continue to monitor. If it turns out to be that there is, we'll continue to do speed surveys down there at a later date, or if there turns to be an accident cluster, what is brought to my attention either via police reports or, by the residents.
I think what I'm
revisit.
trying to say is we're just going around in circles because this item has been deferred second time. And last time when it came to us, we asked the officer to go away and look at speed traffic calming measures, and we're doing so again. But it's already within the recommendations, I believe. If that's okay, I'll put it to the members. All those I've had it seconded. Agree? Agree. It's just carried. Thank you very much. The meeting's finished. Yeah.